This video is meant to highlight the application of lookups as it relates to various data sets. We are going to start not with a lookup, but rather with a Vlookup and Hlookup, as they can do the same functionality. However, there are additional features that would be beneficial where you would apply a Vlookup. So just a basic lookup is when you are only looking up data in a particular area. Vlookup or Hlookup allows you to modify the row or the column in which you are trying to retrieve data, so there's actually more application for it. So we're going to move through the lesson, and we're actually going to move down to the Vlookup area. So keep in mind with your Vlookup, there's two different ways you can use a Vlookup. Either you're looking for an exact match based off of a primary key, or you're looking up a range of values that are in an acceptable range that would also retrieve a value for you. We are going to apply the Vlookup by using, which I think is the most common application, by using a primary key. In this instance, with the employee information data file, we are going to go ahead and retrieve data that's included in another worksheet. So if we go ahead and we open up the worksheet, we will see in one worksheet there is employee information, which has the following field names: employee number, last name, first name, as well as hire date. In the second worksheet, you will notice that there is a salary worksheet. The salary worksheet also includes employee number, last name, first name. In addition, it also includes salary and bonus. So let's say, for example, we wanted to merge the fields that were different into one worksheet. We would do that by using the primary key as the way to merge our data set. So what we'll do is we'll go to the employee information, and we will just copy the field name, hire date. So go ahead to your employee information. We're going to go ahead and copy the field name that's in D1, and we're going to go ahead and paste it into F1 into your salary worksheet. Now what we'll do is we'll use a Vlookup to retrieve the hire date from the employee information worksheet. In order to do that, we will go ahead and press on your insert function box, which is the little FX. What you'll do then is you can either type in the function you're trying to look for, or you can type in some type of description associated with the function. If you already know the function name, it's just easier to type it in. So with the Vlookup, what we're going to do is our first value is the lookup array. That's going to be your primary key. Primary key in the actual table or worksheet that we are working in. So in this instance, we will go ahead and select the cell A2. Now what we're telling Excel to do is look at the value in A2, and you'll notice in your lookup in your function box it's actually identifying it for the first record is equal to 60. Now what we're going to tell is they would look at the value in A2 and match it up against the table array. The table array is the other worksheet that we are going to tell Excel to refer to. In this instance, it will be the employee information. We will go ahead and select the entire columns of A through D. By doing so, what we're telling Excel is that you will always look in this range of columns. And by not selecting specific range of cells, we reduce the potential error that could result by forgetting to put in an absolute reference. From there, what we will do is go ahead and say, okay, take the value that's in A2, which is equal to 60. You're going to match it up against the table array, which is columns A through D in the employee information worksheet. When you find a match in the first column, which will be column A, we want to give the column index number. It's going to say which column, how many columns should I move over to retrieve the value that you're trying to pull into the other worksheet. In this instance, we are trying to pull in the hire date. So starting with column A, that will be position 1, column B will be position 2, column C will be position 3, column D will be position 4. So for a column index number, we're going to go ahead and enter in the value of 4. You will notice that it's retrieving a value in the function argument that looks like a numerical value. However, it's just a formatting thing, and we can go ahead and turn that column into a date format. Additionally, what we want to do in your range lookup is you want to put in the word false if you have a primary key. That means that you are only accepting an exact match to that primary key. You do not want a value that's close enough. If you're using a Vlookup where there's a range of values, for example, if you're assigning grades based off of points and you have a minimum value, you can then either leave it blank or you can enter the value true. Anytime you're using a primary key, you want to type in the word false. we go ahead and hit OK, like I said, you will see in this date field that it is formatting it as a numerical value. So up on your home ribbon, you will see that there's a number format option. We will just go ahead and select that, select your short date, and what we should see is that it goes ahead and it changes the value to 10/5/1997. Let's go back to the employee information worksheet and verify that our VLOOKUP was prepared correctly. So we'll go and look for employee number 60, and we want to remember the date of 10/5/1997. So if we go to the employee worksheet, we'll find employee 60, and we see that he has a hire date of 10/5/1997. So you can see right here that it did work correctly. So what we'll do now is we'll go back to the salary worksheet, and we will simply go ahead and double click on our formula. If it was working correctly, we will notice that all of our dates will populate, and if you just flip them over quickly, you will see different values that are being retrieved. We do not have any error messages, so that means that everybody that's included in the employee information worksheet is also included in the salary worksheet. If we had errors, that would mean that there is not an exact match, and that would be some type of issue where there's one in one worksheet and not in the other. Moving back to our lesson, we're going to move on, okay, and we are going to now focus on our HLOOKUPs. So our HLOOKUPs are basically doing the exact same thing. The difference is the way in which our data is formatted. So we'll notice that our data is now formatted. It's the exact same information except of the records being obtained in our column. So moving down, we will see that our data is moving across in our various rows. Keep in mind too that when you are looking at one individual record, so data relating to one particular employee, you will notice that is in a column. So for column B, we will see that we have Layla, employee number 8, this is her salary, this is her bonus. Our second employee is in our column C, and so on and so forth. Versus in the other version, or in the VLOOKUP data set, we notice that each individual employee record was located in a row. So it's really going to depend on the structure of your data where you would use either a VLOOKUP or an HLOOKUP. The concepts are the same. So what we will do in our HLOOKUP data is we will go ahead and we will insert in row number 6, we will go ahead and define this as hire date. Or you could simply copy the field name from the employee information worksheet. We will go ahead and insert a function. So we're going to do HLOOKUP. What we will do is our lookup value is once again going to be our primary key. So in this instance, it will be the value listed in B1. For our table array, what we will go ahead and do is we will select, instead of selecting our columns like we did in a VLOOKUP, we will go ahead and select our rows, and we will select rows 1 through 4. What we will do is say, okay, when you have a match in row number 1, how many values or how many rows should you move over? So if row number 1 is position 1, row number 2 position 2, row number 3 is position 3, hire date would be position 4. So our row index number for this particular HLOOKUP will be 4. Once again, for our range lookup, if you are okay with an approximate match, you will either leave it blank or you will type in the word true. If you want an exact match, or in other words, you have a primary key, you want to go ahead and enter in the word false. If you go ahead and hit OK, you'll notice once again it's going to format it in a general format for your value. So what you want to do is go to your home, go to the number, format that as a short date. And now if we go back to our original data set and we look for employee number 8, does she have a hire date of 12/28/1997? Employee number 8, 12/27/1997. And you'll notice that these data sets are actually, both of them are in ascending order for the employee number. So it starts with a low value and it moves to a higher value. Same thing for our employee format. We could resort this and sort it in order of, say, alphabetical order by last name, and you'll notice that your VLOOKUP will automatically update as long as you have your VLOOKUP formatted correctly, if you have the word false included within, okay? And so one of the differences where we want to be mindful of is that when you are using it from a true perspective, is that you want to make sure that you have your data set in ascending order. So that becomes important from an ascending order perspective. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a data file. And what you will see here in this data file is also included on UB Learns is what you will see is that we have various students, we have various assignment grades, quiz grades, project grades, so on and so forth. What you will see is that we have total points. That points have been converted to an average, and that dollar average is listed here as a numerical value. What we want to do now is use a VLOOKUP to identify which grade that student should receive based off of the grade cutoffs that we see in the other worksheet that is labeled down here as cutoffs. So what we see is that we have a min, we have a max, and we have a grade. When we're trying to figure out which grade the student should receive, and we're comparing the average that they've earned in comparison to the grade cutoffs, we want to look at the minimum values. So if a student has an average of a 73, and we were to use this grade cutoff matrix, that student would receive a C. Okay, 73 is the minimum for a grade of C. So in order for this VLOOKUP to work correctly, what we need to do is we need to we can just use the min and the grade in order to compare grades. The maximum really is not required as it relates to determining what grade a student receives. So what we can do is then go ahead and insert a VLOOKUP. Our lookup value will be the average that the student earned. We will compare it against the table array, and when we're selecting the table array, it will be in our cutoffs worksheet, and we are only going to select the range of values from B1 to B11. Because I selected a range of values, I'm going to highlight that and go ahead and press F4 to make that an absolute reference. As I copy down my formula, that range of cells should be locked. It should not change. And what I want to do for my column index number is I want to say, okay, when you compare the student's average of 73 and you compare it to my cutoff grade in the minimum column, so in column B, I want you to retrieve the value in the second position. And the second position would be identified as the actual grade itself. So for example, if it's going ahead and it's looking and it's comparing it against the value of 73, we want to say, okay, there's a match here, so then it'll go ahead and retrieve the value in the second column. Okay, so the column index number is important, and it really will coincide with the table array that you've selected. So since we started selecting in column B, B will be 1, C will be 2. Also for your range lookup, we want to make sure that for this one, it's okay if it's an approximate match, meaning that there is no exact match associated with the numerical value. Ooh, is that the value that we would have expected to receive when we were looking at the values for our grades? And actually one mistake that I made in the formula, which I'm going to go back and edit, is instead of looking at the value that I have listed in W, in column W, we're going to go ahead and we are going to change that to the column that's listed in B3. Okay, because I am looking at, I'm comparing apples to oranges in this particular instance. I'm comparing a whole numerical value, if I select W, to an average value in the cutoff, and I need to make sure I'm looking at like terms, or I look at both values as they relate, as they're in percentage form. So let's go ahead and click OK. Now we will see that this person that received a grade of C for their average of 73, and that's what we expected. So what we can do now is we can go ahead and copy these down. We can look for the second person. They received a grade of 87.26. If we go to our cutoff, 87.26 is above the criteria for a B+, so therefore we would expect this student to receive a value of B+, and they did. So what we are noticing here is really in the way in which a VLOOKUP works with the word true is that this is why it's important for it to be in ascending order, is that it'll start with the value at the top of your table array, and it'll start with the first value and say, is the value that I'm comparing against, is it greater than 0? And if it answers yes, it will move to the next value. Is it greater than 60? If the answer is yes, it will continue to move down until it gets to the point where it says no. So for our first record, the student's average was 73. It'll ask, is the student's record, the value of 73, is it equal to or greater than 73? The answer to that is yes. If it moves down to the next record, it'll say, is this value, 73, greater than or equal to 77? If the answer to that is no, it'll go back up to the prior record, and then it'll move over how many positions we tell it to move over. In this instance, 1 position over to the right-hand side. That concludes our lesson for HLOOKUPs and VLOOKUPs. Please let me know if you have any questions.